Hey, Pinanda, croeso, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us to watch this webinar this afternoon. My name is Victoria Ford. I'm Chair of Digital Leaders here in Wales, and I'm also a Director at Parago. We're a Swansea-based digital transformation and service design company. I'm going to be facilitating this webinar this afternoon, and before we kick off the conversation, I'll tell you a little bit more about it and what we're doing here today. So this was originally due to be a live webinar. Unfortunately, we've had a few technical issues with the link, so we're doing this as a pre-record today, and hopefully you're all now getting to watch this and you'll enjoy the conversation that's going to play out this afternoon. So this webinar is part of the Digital Leaders Innovation Week. It's a virtual summit celebrating innovative digital leadership. And this is the second event that the Wales team is running this week. And if you missed our session on Monday that was looking at a culture of innovation in the public sector in Wales, you'll be able to watch that on Catch Up soon. And we had a great conversation earlier in the week, and I'm sure we're going to with our panelists here today. So before we kick off with some of the questions that we've got and start this conversation, I'm going to ask our panelists to shortly introduce themselves. And perhaps, Pryderi, I could ask you to kick off with that, please.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Pryderi. I'm the Managing Director at Menai Science Park, a science park established here on Anglesey by Bangor University. And we are very much driven to support innovative companies and businesses to set up and to grow here in this part of the world.
Thank you very much. Terri, could I ask you to say a few words?
My name is Terri Foulston. I'm the Global Talent Director at a company called Alcumus. We're a risk management, health and safety business headquartered in Wales, but have global operations across the UK and North America. Very fast-paced growth at the moment, so feeling some of those challenges with regards to digital innovation and change at the moment.
Thank you, Terri. Younma.
I am Younma Mouhamad. I am the founder of and CEO of Minor Naturals, but the brand is called Naifasi. And I'm an inventor of a detangling tool called Naifasi Deluxe Detangler. So it will be the first product in the market that will enable Black women to actually apply and distribute lotion all at the same time. I am based in Wales, and thank you very much for having me here today.
Thank you. Will, could I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Hi there, I'm Will Carroll. I'm Chief Executive at Monmouthshire Building Society. We're a Welsh-based building society. Our head office is in Newport, and we cover broadly the South Wales region. We've got branches from Chepstow in the east through to Swansea in the west. We're a £1.4 billion organisation, so reasonably small in financial services terms. But we're in competition with all of the big banks and all of those other providers within the financial services industry. So it's a real challenging environment for us at the moment, and digital innovation is key to what we're doing as an organisation.
Thank you. And Will, we've just announced you as our digital champion for Wales for this year as part of Digital Leaders. So thank you for taking on that role. I know you're going to be working with us to put on more events, and in particular looking at how we can link across sectors in Wales to support knowledge and sharing around digital. So thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Thanks for being asked. I'm delighted.
Cool. And that leaves us with Janine.
Hello, I'm Janine Hughes-Griffiths. I'm a Director of Service for a company called CGI. So CGI are quite a large French-Canadian company with a global reach. They have quite a large presence in Wales, with 3 offices in the Bridgend area, with a lot of our AMS services delivered from those sites. And thank you for inviting me on, Victoria. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's good to have a really nice mix of people and backgrounds here that I hope you're going to end up with a bit of a discussion between us now around what that role of innovation is for the economy in Wales, and what we should be doing more of and how we can support each other better. So perhaps I can start off really asking, first of all, a little bit about just an overview of where innovation is at in Wales, how successful we think it is, what's happening out there, what's going on. And I suppose I'll start with you, Pryderi, on that, if I may, with the work that you're doing. And what do you find most encouraging about the innovation that you're seeing through Spark at the moment?
Absolutely, and I'm quite bullish on this today, especially we've just had our Dragon's Den, or I'm not supposed to call it that for legal reasons, Benedrigia, we're calling it, event last night. Yeah, we're very bullish, we're very excited just to see the breadth of companies coming through, developing companies, a number of digital companies pitching last night, for example, and also based here in the Science Park. And not only the kind of the breadth and what they're doing, but the ambition and truly, you know, opportunities to have global companies developed right here in Wales. It's really encouraging to see that ambition that we have and the scale of the impact. That's what we're after as a Science Park. That's why we exist, is to encourage and develop that impact. The scale of that impact could be huge in terms of employment, in terms of the Welsh economy. So I was just so pleased to see it happen, and I've seen it grown since we've been open in 2018. I've seen new people coming through and opportunities for one to inspire the next. I think there's a lot going on there as well, and people think, actually, Terry, you've done that. Oh, maybe we could do that. Look at them, they're growing. Maybe we could do it as well. So there's opportunities there for mentorship and skill development as well. But we'll come back to that, I'm sure, in a minute, Victoria.
Yeah, thank you. And it's really reassuring to hear some of those good things that are happening. I suppose that brings me a little bit to you, Younma, as well. We've chatted a couple of times now, and I love the story that you have and the story behind your product, which I know people can look at your Instagram, and you've got quite a few little videos on there that tells that story. So I'd encourage people to do so. But what I love as well is that you've made Wales your base for this. You've created your business, your product, and everything here in Wales. What's made it possible for you to do that?
It's I'll bounce back from what Pryderi said. Actually, when I first had my idea, I really didn't believe that Wales was the right place. And I, because of the product that I have, but also I was not aware of the support available around. And I really contemplated just leaving for London. But then I was very lucky to have lots of people around me who just kind of get me to be steady. And then what I discovered is that the Welsh ecosystem is huge. But it's just not necessarily easily visible. But when I think everything for me started when I joined the Cardiff Accelerator in Cardiff, where really I got to see all of the support around. And now my view is completely different. I think actually as an inventor, Wales is a great place to be, just because of the support from Innovate UK, from Business Wales, lots of different things are available, and also the amount of energy and individual that comes that don't know you but love your idea and just want to support you. So that has been really, really lovely. So somehow being in a small place, yes, you can go to London, but actually being in a small place, you have really those tight-knit relationships that kind of build up and we support each other. And so right now I'm just like, I'm in Wales and I'm not going anywhere. This is where I stand, and looking to develop Naifasi, which I believe, as Pryderi say, a potential international brand in Wales. So yeah.
That's great to hear. Great to hear. I think some of those things we talked about there, but you're quite new innovations, and Pryderi, you're seeing new startups coming through the Science Park. Will, you're CEO of a building society that's probably 100 plus years old, maybe. So, you know, what does innovation mean for an organisation like yourself?
It's a great question. For us as an organisation, building societies as an industry, I think it's fair to say, is seen as quite traditional, maybe slightly old-fashioned. So our vision as an organisation is to change that and be an innovative, exciting, modern mutual. So for us, it's about almost changing that image by doing something different. So innovation for us is, you know, how do we change things? How do we change the view of the organisation, whether that's through digital or rebranding or changing our products or our processes, but we're trying to make things better for the future. I think that's our main goal as an organisation, and to do that has to involve innovation, not necessarily invention for us. I think digital opportunities are a great enabler for us in order to innovate and change the way in which we do things. Because at the heart of it, we're a relatively simple business. We take savings off our members and we lend it out to customers, but we've got to do that in a way that our customers still want to do business with us. So innovation is key to that, and using digital as enabler to improving, modernizing, and still offering great value to our customers is really, really important.
It's about looking about what your customers are telling you they need as well, isn't it, to change the way they do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Janine, I suppose CGI is big organisations. So when you're thinking about Wales and innovation in Wales, is Wales keeping up? You've heard some great stories here that says yes, absolutely, but
yes, it's an interesting point actually. So yeah, CGI is one of the largest, excuse me, largest IT employers in Wales. So there's quite a reach, and CGI are very committed to the skills development of their workforce, and innovation in the IT industry is absolutely paramount to us staying competitive and involved in the markets that CGI are invested in. So in terms of how important innovation is, yeah, I'd say, there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of the IT industry in general and the innovation, but I'd say where we need to focus our attention and where CGI do is in skills development, and you touched on a little bit earlier about sort of diversity and inclusion, and where CGI really stand out as well is working in the local community and their work that they do with STEM. So I think that's quite important in the role of innovation as well. Victoria.
And let's thinking about universities, actually, so there's one for you here, Terri, I think. Thinking a little about support that businesses have. I mean, Terri, you've talked about your links to Bangor University. I think, I don't know whether Cardiff Accelerator is related to the university, but I know you've been very involved with Swansea University as well. So, with universities, are they supporting innovation in the way that Wales needs them to? And Terri, for a business like yourselves, are you getting what you need? Is the talent that's coming through the right talent?
I think yes and no, if I'm honest. I think universities are doing a lot in terms of providing that theoretical knowledge, that baseline kind of understanding. But I think probably where we're lacking maybe sometimes is some of that practical experience. And I guess that's where businesses in Wales need to be doing a bit more in terms of partnering with universities to offer things like your degree apprenticeships, your placements, your internships, to give that future talent both the skills that they need and the working experience that they need to thrive. And there's maybe a gap there as well in terms of how we support some of those underrepresented groups due to some of the socio-economic factors. I think universities could be doing a bit more to bridge that gap between that school level and the work level.
Yeah, I think so. There's it's thinking about the roles of the future as well, and whether they're going to bring what we need. If we think about it here and now, you're a business, you're a young business, you're starting out. What support would you like to see for innovators like yourself in using digital and tech to provide you with what you need? Like, I see you've got your hand up as well. Anyway, Younma. So.
I wanted to pick on what Terri said, because I come with two different views, like from being somebody who has been an academic and working in universities and seeing what is done, and actually now shifting from an entrepreneur, and even as a scientist, having to shift my mind from thinking as an engineer to actually looking at that whole process of commercialization. So when it's come to education and how we're educating STEMs and people who are into engineering and all of this sort of field, I think we are, and I'm speaking because of my own, what I have experienced myself as a student and as a staff, is we don't get to experience as scientists really that kind of like business overview of what things happen. What happens once we created something, how does it actually go to market? Because if students and even like young professional or young PhD get to experience that more, it really sometimes actually triggers the mind and actually the interest. And also something that can happen when we do engineering and sciences, we can almost get locked in a loop where we just kind of like do the engineering and then we improve a bit. It's actually that mindset and that thinking, okay, now how will our customer interact with this? Will they bring value? So all of that other thing to really feed into what Terri was saying about actually what is needed for businesses that are actually working into innovation. So I wanted to add that. Not sure if it'll answer your question, but I really just wanted to bounce on what Terri said.
It is a really important point as well. So thank you. No, thank you for joining that. And Pryderi, I know you had your hand up as well off the back of
just to agree on that point, really, it never works in isolation, doesn't it? So the technology alone or the innovation alone will never deliver impact. You need a whole set of skills around business, and I absolutely agree with that. Just picking up on an interesting point that Terri made there as well, about the grads and the skills coming out of university. And we've listened, and industry have told us that up here in North Wales as well, Terri, that these young people are coming out of university, and what they tend to teach there is they give them a breadth of understanding and a number of subject areas within digital. And then it's up to the young people then themselves, probably post-graduating, to decide on the verticals where they want to develop that skills. So what we have done in MSPAC, and 6 months ago, we set up what we're calling a Skills Academy. So we take on the young people as grads for 6 months. We pay their wages for 6 months, and then we place them in industry. Because it's a lot for SMEs and startups to take someone on. So it gives the startups something, they've got an extra skills base. The young people gain employment, but also better CVs and better networks. And in that 6 months, we nurture them so that they've got the employability skills. They can hold conversations, work in a team, use the basic platforms for their everyday work. And then by the end of the 6 months, they then graduate again from our Skills Academy, and then they go into industry. So we're just finishing the first 2 at the moment. And the good news I wanted to share is that we've got another 20 now coming on board into the Skills Academy in digital. But I quite like the format myself, because it just gives people that grounding and that opportunity to nurture them. And then Janine, you mentioned STEM as well, and it's vital that we as industry get involved in those STEM activities and inspire young people into STEM. But I guess picking up on what Younma said, we've got to make sure in our STEM activities that we do make it relevant for business and industry as well. So we had a rocketry workshop here last Friday. It's important to make the links back then. Well, how does this impact? What's the business element of this? What's the branding, the marketing, and everything else, so that it's a rounded experience in whatever we provide.
You're absolutely right. It's about the whole thing, isn't it? It's not just one element or another. So it's great to hear that's happening as well. I wanted to ask a question actually about staying on skills a minute, but Will, you've got your hand up. Do you want to come in before I do that?
Yes, yeah, Victoria, thanks. I think just to echo really what Pryderi was saying, and it's not just about the universities providing the skills. I think businesses have got to be part of it as well, and link in with the universities and giving students the opportunity to experience work and get that practical experience that will set them up for the future. And if there's Welsh businesses involved in that, then those students are more likely to stay in Wales in the future. I think if we can build that ecosystem sort of successfully, and there are a lot of sort of schemes out there at the moment. We're involved with 14 other financial services organisations where we bring graduates into the society, and not just in digital, across all areas of the business to develop their own skills and choose where they want to work in the future. And that's proved extremely successful, because you get talent retention, you develop students, and I think that's very good for the long term of Wales and our economic future.
No, definitely. I mean, we were really lucky in Prago that we had a year in industry student who joined us for a year from Swansea University, and she brought completely different insight and thinking to us as a company as well. So it's a two-way thing. Yeah. So actually it's made us better, because we've learned things from a completely different perspective. She's gone back to finish her year in university. We'd love to have kept her, but we had to let her go back and finish her studies, because that would have been the wrong thing to do. But
that's the thing. I suppose it creates risks on the other hand as well, because particularly where you're innovating. So Monmouthshire's doing a robotics project at the moment to improve manual processes, and we're one of the first, not just in Wales, in the industry to be doing what we're doing. And we've developed skills internally using graduates as well as experienced colleagues. They've then become very, very marketable. And we're also seeing that risk of losing colleagues, but that's great because we're developing people to go on and succeed in business. But it's something that we've got to watch as well as a smaller business.
No, absolutely. Terri, you got your hand up. Do you want to come in?
It was just one quick point on what Will was just talking about. So I think there are businesses that are providing some of those kind of foundation training courses, bringing people through into the business. And I think one of the key points that in terms of the success of those, it sounds like, Will, you've got a really good balance there, but it's also about making sure that you're creating that environment and culture where those skills can then be developed, those innovative ideas are encouraged, and there's no punishment for failure when it comes to that innovation and innovative thinking. So I think culture is just as important as then the skills platforms that you're creating in terms of developing those skills within the business.
Yeah, and this session that we ran on Monday about culture of innovation in the public sector in Wales has a huge focus on that conversation about exactly that, about creating the environment to allow people to do things differently, giving them those permissions, but as importantly, the support to do so as well. While you're unmuted, Terri, we talked a lot there about bringing new talent in and how we bring in the talent of the future, which is absolutely critical for us. But actually there's something about existing employees, about what we can do to develop and support the employees that we've got working with us now to be able to work differently, whether that's through digital, through tech, innovation, culture. Where do you think we are in that space?
In terms of, I guess, where we are, I think various different employees will have different needs when it comes to tech and innovation and how we kind of develop people on. So I guess it's understanding some of those individuals and their needs of what support they require to then tailor programs around them. I don't think there's a one size fits all approach. And I think there's probably groups of people that we could say are further along that journey than others. So I think there's been a lot of progress in terms of how we support some of those people, but there's definitely more that we could do.
And do you think we've got enough skills that we need here in Wales?
I think it depends on the types of skills. If I'm looking at it purely from a recruitment angle, we definitely feel a struggle of certain kind of hiring into certain roles. I definitely think that trying to hire in such a tight market at the moment where it's a massively candidate driven market, we're not able to recruit those roles at the same pace that we need to drive that innovation and change as a business. So I guess from that side of things, no, we don't have enough skills within certain areas, but then there are things that we're doing to try and close those gaps in terms of those development programs, but I particularly see it at a senior level at the moment with regards to some of those specialisms that we're trying to hire into.
Thank you. Okay, thinking a bit more then around the support to businesses. Pryderi, it was interesting whether you think the access to funding is where it needs to be to encourage people to innovate in Wales.
It's a difficult one, this one, because which areas of funding are we talking about, I guess. But in terms of the R&D funding in Wales, clearly that's not devolved. We do have some programs like Smart Innovation, but being an ERDF project, it's maybe not so easy to access. There's a lot of paperwork to be developed with those applications for Smart Cymru, and for good reasons, I'm sure. We do have Innovate UK that we can access, but we all got the scars, presumably, of applying for smart grants into Innovate UK, and it's so competitive, the rounds, which is great to see for innovation. But I'm sure there are very valid projects that are just not funded, unfortunately, and fall into the category of being valid, but we just simply does not have the funding within Innovate UK to do so either. And then you look for funding calls and so forth that are within your particular verticals and projects that you're developing. So R&D funding, I would call for a greater devolution of that, and because for me, what the Welsh Government have a better understanding of where we have strengths and weaknesses and how that could be shared. And I'd also clearly call for it to be equally shared. And there's a lot that goes into what's called the golden triangle, isn't there? And I call, obviously, as a Welshman, for that to be shared equally between the nations. And then into private equity finance, again, the picture here might be totally different to what it is in South, but it's not easy. It really is not easy raising private equity finance. It's a slog. It's hard work. We've just had our pitching event last night, and that was on the back of companies telling us we are really struggling to have those networks that you would maybe in Cardiff or in London up here in rural Wales. So we decided, well, we'll go global, we'll go online, we'll hold our own pitching event, which was successful. And next year we are taking it, we are going down to London, and we're going to have a Welsh investment event in London next year. So kind of reacting to that lack of private finance there as well. So there are things that we can do, but I don't think it's the easiest of pictures, but it's very important we get that initial stage right to enable the innovation and to build and to flourish.
Yeah, I think so. And Younma, we were talking about this before this call started, actually, with some of the funding activities. But one of the conversations we've had previously, Younma, I scribbled it down because it stuck with me. You said that your ambition is to innovate, manufacture and sell a global brand from Wales. And I love that ambition. So, what skills and support do you think you need to help you achieve that ambition?
Once again, just bouncing on what Terri said, it was not easy going from an invention to actually final product. There was no financial support, none, literally. And I feel very privileged because in a way I was a professional who could afford to set a huge amount of my own salary on the side to fit into the business. But regarding R&D, literally most of it to the point of the patent, I did it pretty much by myself, going to places like, fabrication lab and stuff like that. So really, I feel like it's a bit of a shame because, as I say, I was privileged to have a salary that allowed me to do that. But what about all of the other people might have amazing idea, but might not really know things like, have the scientific insight and background, but also might not have the possibility to put saving to file for their patent and all of that. And exactly regarding the fund available, there is not, those funds usually you need to be match funded. What about people who cannot bring much funding? I was just an individual with an idea. I'm not a huge institution with money on the side to put into an idea. So that devolution, as Pryderi was saying, is really important. And I think the support that will be really good is actually some key skills, especially for small businesses when you cannot necessarily at the same time actually hire people in. For example, things like, and in this case, there is a BIC Innovation in Wales who has been a great structure for that. I had access to knowledge about things that I just didn't know as an individual because I'm by myself, there is no team in this case. But things like, the website, things like SEO, things like, making sure that, you're visible, marketing. So those programs that enable you and enable businesses to have actually access to expertise that you might not have in are really essential. So funding, yes, but more of that, those type of skills will be really availability to support early businesses before they can go on, I think is what I would love to have right now.
Yeah, and it's I suppose, Janine, maybe you could come in here because I think there must be a role for companies working in Wales, based in Wales, more established, to be supporting businesses. So, businesses like CGI, what could you be doing to support, or what are you doing to support innovation in Wales?
In the sort of bringing people on, learning, do you mean around that?
In any parts of it, to be honest, I think it'd be good to explore a little bit about what the roles are for companies working in Wales to support innovation, whether it's creating roles, supporting with skills, the type of business.
Yeah, so as I touched on, we do a lot in the local community where we go out to not so much small businesses, I'd have to check up on that, but where we go out to education and other places, and to pick up on something that was said earlier around I think it was Pryderi, where you bring people in and you mentor, and they'll go through sort of an academy and training. That's fab, and we do something very, very similar where we work with Fast Futures We're part of a mentorship program. But in Wales, yeah, I suppose where it's been really important for us is as a large IT employer for the area, is to getting your name out there and making sure that we're supporting the communities in a way that not only do they know what's available to them from CGI, but also what's available in the market and what's available for them to learn, so that they can channel their learning, or they can channel their careers in the right way. So I suppose going back to, not to touch on it again, but going back to STEM is one of the strongest areas, I'd say, in Wales where we have a presence. So CGI won STEM Company of the Year last year around this, and I'd say that we're leaders in this area, in that going out and just supporting from a grassroots level. So this is all ages, from ages 6 and upwards, where we've actually had, you know, members' children come into CGI, and it's just great because, you know, some of it is around teaching children around sort of the role of IT and what that means for the future. So it's very stereotypical. The industry that I work in has been sort of male dominated, for example, but in terms of being innovative, it's just, as well as sort of the STEM side of it, is showing other businesses and other organizations and the community what we do as a company, and what's available to them, so that it's sort of really good for the economy. People, oh, you know, I didn't realize CGI existed, for example, and then they might it might channel them into a career that wouldn't have existed otherwise. So that's sort of a stepping stone, if you like, into it. Hopefully that answers your question, Victoria.
No, thank you. And it's got me thinking a bit really around, you know, Younma saying that she was able, in a privileged position, I suppose, to be able to take her innovation and turn it into the business that she's building today. So first, there's a bit around, for me, around inclusion and diversity in the innovation space for Wales. Pryderi, perhaps I could ask you on this one again, whether you think we're doing enough in Wales to support those who do find it difficult to access digital data, tech, or the opportunities even to sort of be innovative and think differently about the way business is done here in Wales.
No, we're not. Straight off, some of the statistics we captured in the science park is around equality and diversity. Who's working here? How much do they earn? And it's shocking to see the wage gap between men and women. It's still massive, and the sort of roles that women have. We find that the men have the technical roles, well paid, and that women have the more of the administration type roles, and then that leads to your gender pay gaps and all the rest of it. So we need to inspire people from all backgrounds to take an interest in innovation, and we need to make it more accessible. One of the initiatives that we have is our Time of the Month Club, where we do have women who work at the science park get together and discuss ways of tackling the issue, of inspiring more people, any barriers that's become apparent, that sort of thing. But we need more initiatives and more work to do there, definitely, Victoria.
And maybe I can ask Younma to come in, because I know you've done a lot of work around women in STEM as well.
So actually, I want to pick on the word innovation. I think sometimes even the language that we use sometimes can be quite intimidating for young people. I think this might sound awkward to you, but for a very long time, I couldn't really relate to the word. And in a way, also, I didn't really kind of like even thought that think about innovation as creativity. And I think for the young people that we're trying to bring into this field, into this, STEM or science or, different form of innovation, we need to kind of use a language that for them is much more accessible and they can relate to, because you just think, I don't know, I think as a young person, I used to think like, it's like complicated stuff, but actually it's just nurturing that creative thinking in a very, very simple way. So I think that is an important one. Regarding equality, diversity is a big thing. I think is quite an interesting thing. There needs to be a sweet spot. There needs to be I think very often is a bit, it's important really for the person who is in charge and the leaders to really take the time to ask themselves what they're doing. Because sometimes it can be in situation where things feel like almost like a tick box exercises, and that really take away the passion of the staff, who very often are those that actually the one are leading behind, because and then the leaders are kind of getting dragged along. I think that as an institution, but the leaders themselves need to really to understand, why is this important for us? Either it just become the last thing that we do when we do have time and it never get done. So that's the first thing. And I think it's working with from the mindset of deficiency, of actually thinking that is the people from the minority, whether it's women, whether it's disabled people, that actually who are not up to speed with what we are doing, but investing in that, but also wondering, you know, creating that space of actually bringing that diversity within the team themselves, because sometimes either competencies, ideas are missed because people don't actually understand. The team themselves don't have that diversity and things go amiss. So I think it's a two-way kind of like equation. We invest into a talent, but we look ourselves and see what environment do we create and how is that talent actually received. Because I know that in some cases, people, for example, with Afro hair, people don't see the value of it, but it's a huge market just because they don't understand the problem. They don't know people around them that have the problem and what ideas. So the space that you come in as a diverse person, regardless of what that is as important as your potential being nurtured at the same time. So that's what I'll say into that comment.
Really important, and going back to your bits about the language that we use, you're right, it is so important. You can switch people off just by language, and we forget that sometimes. And Chris, who's supporting in the background of this web, and I were having a conversation the other day about what actually do we mean by innovation anyway. You know, it's just about allowing people the opportunity to think differently and have those ideas, as you said, nurtured and supported, and being able to try new things and looking at what the art of the possible is around what people are going to need now and in the future. So yeah, I think that's a very good point that we all need to be very aware of. Will, you wanted to come in?
Yes, yeah. I think Younma just touched on it, the issue of leadership and leaders being dragged along. And I think Terri spoke about it earlier. Tone from the top is very, very important in everything that we're talking about today in terms of innovation, diversity and inclusion. If we're not creating the right culture within the business, then, you know, and you can't see it from your leaders, then it'll never filter through. So we can't say one thing at the top. We want to be innovative. We want to be diverse. We want to get diversity of thought within our organization. If we don't sponsor it and we don't support it, then it'll never happen, I don't think. So I think that tone from the top, that leadership is all important. And so in our business, yeah, we encourage innovation. Fear of failure, I think we've spoken of as well today. People shouldn't, if you're innovating, not everything is going to succeed. So if you're going to fail, don't be frightened of failure, learn from it and move on to the next. The next phase will be better. And certainly we wouldn't discourage anybody in terms of diversity to challenge their thought, move into new areas, move into areas that you're not, you know, not traditionally moving into. We need that diversity of thought. We think that benefits our organisation and will benefit all organisations across industry moving forward.
Absolutely, and thank you. You're spot on. There's a role for us all to be playing, isn't there? At every level of this. I'm mindful of time. There's one thing I wanted to do before we finish, which is to come to each of you. We've heard about some really good stuff going on. We've heard lots of challenges and also lots of food for thought here about things that we all need to be thinking about, what we do in our own businesses and the way we support people. But I absolutely want to make sure we finish on the positive that this is, you know, about, because the opportunities feel like they're massive for us in Wales at the moment, albeit that we need to be thinking differently about how we do some of those things. So I'd like to ask each of you to sort of finish on what's the one thing that's making you feel really positive about, whether you want to call it innovation or whatever it is, about the way that we are bringing new talent in, developing businesses here in Wales, and what it's going to mean for Wales in the future. So I'm throwing that at you, and rather than pick on some, is anyone ready to go first? Silent. Janine, was that half a hand?
No, I was just going to say, so I don't know if it's too relevant to the Welsh economy, but I can link it back in. So what we've noticed in CGI and probably around across a whole raft of companies is part of the pandemic has meant that with us working remotely, it's meant that we're working in different ways and we're collaborating and getting in touch with each other in different ways and connecting with people. So when we talk about the Welsh economy, I think we've expanded that in that we've got the Welsh economy also, you know, also includes people that work across a whole range of geographies across the UK now. In that we're bringing people and you know, encouraging people to move down into Wales and be more collaborative with our teams in Wales, because they've got those communication tools and that interaction with the teams that perhaps we didn't have before. So where we, you know, obviously CGI very, very client driven, so we've always been sort of placed around where the clients are. So that's meant that occasionally you get pockets of people that would only ever have worked with each other, but now it's sort of such a broad spectrum and a reach across. For a company like CGI, it's quite large. I appreciate it might be more difficult for smaller companies, but I mean, I think the technologies, as I say, used during remote working and hybrid working, if that's what we call it now, has been fantastic, because it just encourages people to see what Wales has to offer and what Welsh companies are doing. So I just wanted to add that in there. I don't know if that's a good kick-off point.
Absolutely is. Thank you very much. Yeah, Pryderi, do you want to go next? Your positive thing.
My positive thing, yeah. I think we've got a great ecosystem, and there's another term maybe that we don't like. So if someone can come up with a better one, but we are connected better than we ever were, and we need to build that, because there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of calls like this, and I now know a couple of new faces, and when something crops up, I'll be able to connect people. So it's very, very important, and you can't underestimate that. And as Welsh people, and we're very good, and we ultimately know someone who's related to each other, and I used to work with you, this, that, the other. So very small nation, but it gives us a competitive advantage in that. So very encouraging. And as I mentioned at the top of the meeting, just to see the breadth and the ambition we've heard this afternoon as well, that's something to celebrate.
It absolutely is. Thank you. Younma.
I would say two things. I would say energy and wealth. Really kind of like that would summarize everything. The wealth of different businesses that you get to discover once you enter the space is really inspiring, encouraging, and allow you to keep on pushing. And that goes back to also the energy of all of the different startups and just kind of like, you know, supporting one another. So yeah, those are my 2 words.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Will?
I think building on Pryderi's point, actually, I think COVID, we've seen a massive increase in localism and people moving back to their communities and supporting their communities, and how we interact and shop and do things in everyday life. We sort of refocused, and we've already spoken about the workplace and how that's changed. So I think, you know, the Welsh are quite a parochial bunch, and we can all sort of work together to be part of the solution going forward. I think work within our communities, support our local businesses, our local ecosystems, whether that's digital or whether it's on the high street. And I think if you know, if the money flows within the country and we can attract people in, I think we'll only see the Welsh business grow and become more successful in the future.
Lovely, thank you very much. Terri, I think that leaves you.
Yeah, I think I'd echo what a couple of people have said with regards to, I guess, the changes that COVID has brought in terms of flexible working opportunities, and it gives us a massive opportunity now to look at how we close some of those gaps where it's taken down some of those barriers we had before, in terms of, particularly from a talent perspective, where we might have been struggling to find people within a local area that needed to be on site X number of days a week. Those barriers are kind of taken down. So from an opportunity moving forward perspective, it gives us an opportunity to really kind of look at how we bring talent into businesses in Wales, how we develop them, and how we utilise more of a digital world to do that.
Perfect way to finish. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr iawn pawb. For me, it's been really encouraging and actually inspirational hearing you all speak today. The conversation has really highlighted the power of linking people up and connectivity and the opportunities that there are for us in Wales at the moment. So I hope you have made your own connections here today, as well as it being of interest for people listening in. So thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr.